Hi, I'm Frances, and welcome to my channel. I am going to read today from Sylvia Plath, Johnny Panic and the Bible of Dreams. And this is also in her notebooks and journals. These are the notes on her short story, That Widow Mangada. This is not the story, That Widow Mangada, but the notes, which I personally enjoy the notes better than I do the actual short story. So this is from Sylvia Plath's notebooks, the summer of 1956, Benidorm, July the 15th. Widow Mangada's house, pale peach, brown stucco on the main avenida running along shore, facing the beach of reddish yellow sand with all the gaily painted cabanas making a maze of bright blue wooden stilts and small square patches of shadow. The continuous poise and splash of incoming waves mark a ragged white line of surf beyond which the morning sea blazes in the early sun, already high and hot at 10:30. The ocean is cerulean towards the horizon, vivid azure nearer shore, blue and sheened as peacock feathers. Out in the middle of the bay juts a rock island, slanting up from the horizon line to form a sloped triangle of orange rock, which takes the full glare of sun on its crags in the morning and falls to purple shadow toward late afternoon. Sun falls in flickering lines and patches on the second-story terrace through waving fans of palm leaves and the slats of the bamboo awning. Below is the widow's garden, with dry, dusty soil from which sprout red geraniums, white daisies, and roses. Spined cacti in reddish earthenware pots line the flagstone paths. Two blue-painted chairs and a blue table are set under the fig tree in the backyard in the shade. Behind the house rises the rugged purplish range of mountainous hills, dry, sandy earth covered with scrubbed clumps of grass. Early in the morning, when the sun is still cool and the breeze is wet and salt fresh from the sea, the native women dressed in black with black stockings go to the open market in the center of town with their wicker baskets to bargain and buy fresh fruit and vegetables at the stalls. Yellow plums, green peppers, large ripe tomatoes, wreaths of garlic, bunches of yellow and green bananas, potatoes, green beans, squashes, and melons. Gaudy striped beach towels, aprons, and roped sneakers are hung up for sale against the wide adobe pueblos. Within the dark caverns of the stores are great jugs of wine, oil, and vinegar in woven straw casings. All night the lights of the sardine boats bob and duck out in the bay, and early in the morning the fish market is piled high with fresh fish. Silvered sardines cost only 8 pesetas the kilo and are heaped on the table, strewn with a few odd crabs, starfish, and squid. Doors consist of a swaying curtain of long beaded strips which rattle apart with the entry of each customer and let in the breeze, but not the sun. In the bread shop, there is always the smell of fresh loaves, as in the dark, windowless inner room, men stripped to the waist tend the glowing ovens. The milk boy delivers milk early in the morning, pouring his liter measure from the large can he carries on his bicycle into each housewife's pan, which she leaves on her doorstep. Mingling with motor scooters, bicycles, and the large, shiny grand tourist cars are the native donkey carts, loaded with vegetables, straw, or jugs of wine. Workers wear sombreros, take siesta from 2 to 4 in the afternoon in the shade of a wall or tree, or on their own carts. The widow's house has only cold water and no refrigerator. The dark, cool cupboard is full of ants. A shining array of aluminum pots, pans, and cooking utensils hang on the wall. One washes dishes and vegetables in large marble basins, scrubbing them with little snarled bunches of straw. All cooking, fresh sardines fried in oil, potato and onion tortillas, café con leche, is done on the blue flame of an antique petrol burner. Benidorm, July 15th. We met Widow Mangada one Wednesday morning on the hot, crowded bus jolting over the desert dusty roads from Alicante to Benidorm. She heard us exclaiming about the blue bay and turned from her seat in front of us to ask whether we spoke French. A little, we said, whereupon she broke explosively into description of her wonderful house by the sea, with garden and balcony terrace and kitchen rights. She was a small, dark woman of middle age, stylishly dressed in white knitted lace over a black slip, white-heeled sandals, terrifically comme il faut. Her coal-black hair was done in many waves and curls. Her saucer black eyes were emphasized by blue eyeshadow and two startling black eyebrows, penciled straight, slanting upward from the bridge of her nose to her temples. She bustled about, getting native boys to put her baggage on their hand-drawn carts, and hustled us to the main road, trotting slightly ahead and babbling in her peculiar French about her house and how she was lonely and wanted to let out apartments, and she knew right away that we were genteel. When we said we were writers and wanted a quiet place by the sea to work, she jumped to agree that she knew how it was exactly. I too am a writer of love stories and poems. Her house facing the cool blue blaze of the bay was more than we had dreamed. We fell in love immediately with the smallest room, its French window doors opening onto a balcony terrace, perfect for writing. Vine wove green leaves in the railing. A palm and a pine tree grew alongside, shading one side, and the slatted bamboo awning could be drawn out to form a little roof as shelter from the direct noon sun. We knocked her down from the first price to 100 pesetas a night, figuring we could save immensely by doing our own marketing and cooking. From her rapid babble of French, mangled by a strong Spanish accent, we gathered that she would trade Spanish lessons for English lessons, that she had been a teacher and lived in France for 3 years. As soon as we moved in, it became clear that Madame was not used to running a maison for boarders. There were 3 other empty rooms on the second floor, which she evidently hoped to let out, for she spoke continually of how we must manage for les autres when they arrived. She had amassed a great quantity of white china plates, cups, and saucers in the formal dining room, and an equally large amount of aluminum pots and pans hung on hooks lining the kitchen walls, but there was absolutely no silver tableware. Senora seemed shocked that we did not carry knives, forks, and spoons about with us, but brought out finally 3 elaborate place settings of her best silver, which she laid out, saying that this was only for the 3 of us, and she would soon go to Alicante to buy some simple kitchen silver for us and put her best silver away. Also, the problem of a small bathroom, fine for the 2 of us, but hardly fitted for 8, and the trouble of arranging cooking and dinner schedules on the one petrol burner seemed not to have occurred to her either. We held our breath and wished fervently that she would have no customers when she put up the sign, "Apartments for Rent," on our balcony terrace. We had at least made sure that she would not use our balcony, which adjoined another larger room, as a selling point, by explaining that it was the only place we could write in peace, since our room was too small for a table, and the beach and garden were fine for vacationers, but not for writers' workrooms. Occasionally, from our balcony, where we soon took to eating meals, streaming mugs of cafe con leche in the morning, a cold picnic of bread, cheese, tomatoes, and onions, fruit and milk at noon, and a cooked dinner of meat or fish with vegetables and wine at twilight under the moon and stars, we could hear Senora conducting people around the house, speaking in her rapid staccato French. But during the first week, although she had conducted several potential roomers about, no one had come. We had fun hazarding on the objections they might make. No hot water, 1 small bathroom, only an antique petrol burner. With such modern hotels in town, probably her price was too high. What wealthy people would be willing to market and cook? Who but poor students and writers like us? Perhaps the roomers might decide to eat out in the expensive restaurants. That was a possibility. We had found out, too, that although she had made a wild, extravagant gesture We had found out too that although she had made wild, extravagant gestures when showing us about the house, pointing to an empty, iceless icebox, motioning out an imaginary electrical machine for making the freezing shower water warm, that none of these comforts were forthcoming. We found the water from the tap was unpalatable and strange to the taste when the Senora miraculously produced a glass pitcher full of delicious sparkling water for our first dinner. We asked, incredulous, if it had come from the taps. She burbled on evasively about the health-giving qualities of the water, and it was a full day before I caught her drawing up a pail of it from a cistern sunk deep in the kitchen covered by a blue board. The tap water, it turned out, was non-potable. The Senora was fanatic about the house being proper for her prospective lodgers. We were to wash all dishes after meals, put them away, keep the bathroom tidy. She gave us 2 dish towels to be hung behind the door and hung up several decoy clean towels on the wall for lait au trait. We were also to have a small petrol burner of our own, for which we should buy petrol and matches, another dent in our desperate food budget of 40 pesetas a day for the 2 of us. In spite of her concern for the proper condition of the house, Senora washed her greasy dishes in standing cold water, often dirtier than the dishes themselves, scrubbing them with frayed tangles of straw. Our first morning was a nightmare. I woke early, still exhausted from our continuous traveling, uneasy in a strange bed, to find no water in the taps. I tiptoed down the stone stairs to turn on the peculiar machine with odd blue-painted spigots and wires jutting out, which the Senora had said made water. Turning the switch the day before, upon which there was a convincing rumble as some complicated machinery started up. I turned the switch. There was a blue flash, and acrid smoke began pouring from the box. Quickly, I shut off the switch and went to knock on the Senora's door. No answer. I went upstairs and woke Ted, who was burned scarlet from the day before in the sun. Sleepily, Ted came down in his bathing trunks to turn the switch. There was another blue flash, no sound. He tried the light switch, no electricity. We pounded on the Senora's door. No answer. She's either gone out or dead, I said, wishing for water to make some coffee. The milk had not yet come. No, she'd have turned on the water if she'd gone out. She's probably lying in there refusing to get up. At last, grumpily, we went back upstairs to bed. About 9 o'clock, we heard the front door open. Probably she sneaked around from the back to come in as if she'd been out all morning. I padded barefoot downstairs, where the Senora, crisp in her white knitted dress, freshly made up black eyebrows, greeted me cheerily. You slept well, madame? I was still smoldering. There is no water, I said without preamble. No water to wash or make coffee. She laughed a queer, deep laugh, which she used whenever anything went wrong, as if either I or the water supply were very childish and silly, but she would make it all right. She tried the light switch. No light, she exclaimed triumphantly, as if all were solved. It is so in the village. This is usual in the morning, I asked coldly. Pass detout, she rattled off from under a raised eyebrow, apparently just noticing my cool irony. You must not take it so hard, madame. She bustled into the kitchen, lifted the blue-painted lid by the sink, dropped a bucket on a string, and drew up a sloshing pailful of clear water. Plenty of water, she gurgled, all the time. So that was where she kept her store of health-giving water. I nodded grimly and began to make coffee while she ran next door to investigate the state of affairs. I was pretty sure that with my native inability to manage machines, I had fused something and blasted the whole water and electric supply in the town. Evidently, it was just local, for the Senora fiddled with the machine, crowed that water was coming out everywhere, and said never to touch the machine, but to call her immediately when we were worried about the water. She would fix everything. We also had trouble with the petrol stove. For our first dinner, I planned one of Ted's favorite suppers, a platter of string beans and fried fresh sardines, which we had bought early at the fish market for 8 pesetas the kilo and kept cool in a homemade water container of several pans covered with a wet cloth and plate. I put the beans on to cook, but after 20 minutes they were still as hard as they had been at first, and I noticed the water wasn't even boiling. Ted doubted if there was any heat and said maybe the petrol was used up. He turned the heat higher and the flame burned a thin, smoking green. "Senora," we called. She came rushing in, clucking from the living room, whipped off bean pot, cooking ring, and burner to reveal the damning sight of over an inch of frayed, burned wick. We'd turned it up too high, and the wick itself had been burning for lack of petrol. After filling the tank with petrol, messing about with the wick, raising the fresh part left, Senora started the burner again, tested the beans. She was not at all satisfied. Running out of the room, she came back and tossed in a handful of powder, which fizzed and foamed. I asked her what it was, but she just chuckled and said she had been cooking a lot longer than I and knew some petites choses. Magic powder, I thought. Poison. Bicarbonate of soda, Ted reassured. Senora, we began to realize, had been accustomed to a far grander scale of living than her present circumstances. Each evening, she set out to town to see about a bonne for cleaning house. The little girl, who had been scrubbing floors the day we arrived, had not shown up since. "It's the hotels," the Senora told us. "All the maids go to the hotels. They pay so much." If you have a maid, you must be very nice and careful of her feelings nowadays. She breaks your best china bowl, and you must smile and say, "Do not trouble yourself over it, mademoiselle." The second morning I came down to make coffee. I found the Senora in a soiled towel bathrobe, her eyebrows not yet drawn on, cleaning the stone floors with a wet mop. "I am not used to this," she explained. "I am used to 3 maids, a cook, a cleaner, 3 maids. I do not work when the front door is open for the public to see, but when it is shut." She shrugged her shoulders, gestured comprehensively with her hands. "I do everything, everything." In the milk shop one day, we were trying to explain where we wanted our 2 liters a day delivered. The houses on the Avenida were not numbered, and it was impossible to make the delivery boy understand our elementary Spanish. Finally, a French-speaking neighbor was called in. "Oh," she smiled, "you live with Widow Mangada. Everybody here knows her. She dresses very stylish with much makeup." The woman grinned as if Widow Mangada were a town character. "Does she do the cooking for you?" she asked curiously. A kind of instinctive loyalty toward the Senora and her straitened circumstances sprang up in me. "Oh, of course not," I exclaimed. "We do all our own cooking." The woman nodded and smiled like a cream-fed cat. That's it. The end.